Con artists of Reddit, what is the most successful scam you have pulled? Back in the 80s, when Ireland started being on people's radar a bit more and there were very few Irish backpackers compared to now, this is in Australia, I would score massive amounts of free booze in faux Irish pubs by pretending to be from the Emerald Isle. I was in the restroom of one using the urinal when a drunk guy came up next to me and asked if I was having a good day. For some reason, my subconscious decided to answer in an Irish accent. He was excited to meet an actual Irish person in a fake Irish pub, where there were never any Irish, not even the staff, and invited me back to his table to meet his friends. I didn't have to buy a round all night. I kind of forgot about it for a few months, until I again found myself in another Bridie O'Reilly's, and a pretty girl pulled up next to me at the bar and said hello. One hello, my darling, later, and I was drinking for free again. The act became perfected over time. You had to give the audience what they wanted. Many wanted a dangerous Irishman, maybe someone who had been peripherally involved in the Troubles. For those, I would refuse to say if I was Protestant or Catholic and would be vague about surname and employment. I'd also get evasive if asked about the scar above my eyebrow. For others, I would admit to being Catholic and maybe tear up if asked about my hometown. One time a girl told me she'd been to Londonderry and I corrected her hotly, "That's just damn Derry, thanks very much." I have no idea if that's actually a thing. So every few months I'd do this, for years. After maybe a decade of it, I was sitting in a non-Irish pub with a new friend. Something about Ireland came up, and I started to tell the story when he calls bullcrap on me. I turned to the booth behind me, interrupted the girls talking there, and said, "Hello, darlings. Are you having a good time tonight?" After they replied in the positive, I introduced myself as Dylan and my friend as Murphy. Did I know if he could do an Irish accent? Nope. We quickly moved to their booth and had our drinks bought for us for the next few hours. On the way home, my still shell-shocked friend and I wander past a house party with door security, and I stop and ask the guy if it's a private party. He says it is, but nobody can resist my fake Irish charms. So after a few minutes, we're inside. The highlights of the next few hours: free drinks, kissing the birthday gear, forgetting which one of us is supposed to be Dylan, and which one is Murphy, the live musical act composing a song about everyone's two new Irish friends and me stealing a slab of beer, that's 2 dozen, at the end of the night. That was the last time I did it because I wanted to go out on a high. The only downside, the first few drinks I was offered were always Guinness, which I damn hate, but after a couple I would say I'd like to try some local beers. Story 2. I made a fake occupant profile of this insanely hot girl I went to high school with, just to get a feel for my competition as a guy. Ended up getting 100 messages per day. I added an Amazon wish list to the profile and told all the visitors to get me something if they wanted my attention. Got a $280 Coach watch and a $400 purse in the mail a few days later. Gave them to my mom and sister for Christmas that year. Apparently dudes get pretty thirsty. Story 3. This was totally a friend of mine, not me. Managed to get a cut off the local dealer's monthly profits by selling him small vials of a special fertilizer that he, my friend, could get from a special connection. Every month, he'd get about $200 just by giving him a sealed package with a few vials. One for each vase. It came with instructions, 3 drops per day. The dealer was ecstatic with how much faster the plants were growing and how much better the weed was and had no problem in giving him a part of the profit. It was just apple vinegar. This went on for half a year before the guy went in. He never knew the truth. Story 4. I was in the 2nd grade. I had horrible eyesight, but didn't know that. My desk was at the back of the class where I couldn't see jack crap on the board in the front. So I did badly in school. My teacher had a token system for giving out extra goodies to kids who finished assignments or did other good boy, good girl things. The tokens were these pink computer punch cards roughly cut into squares. But I never got tokens because I sucked at being teacher's pet back then. So, coming in from recess one day, I am walking in line like a good sheep into the classroom, and I notice a stack of these pink punch cards on the counter in the back of the room where I sat. I sneakily grab a bunch, and as the teacher read Mr. Popper's sequence to us, I sat at my desk with my crappy scissors cutting those pink cards into little squares. Now, my teacher did not exactly track who she gave tokens to or how many she gave. I just went up to her a few times a week after that with my counterfeit tokens and got candy and puzzle time and a bunch of other stuff. It was nice, and I never got caught. Story 5. I may or may not have my high school diploma, but I definitely have a college degree. I have been going with the line, well, I needed a high school diploma to get into the military, so I must have one. My school's admittance officer has been searching for proof of my high school diploma for about 3 years now. Story 6. Back in college, we would occasionally have parties where we sold shots to make some extra cash. This one particular night, I was on bar duty, and the hard stuff was running low. In a panic, I ran into the kitchen and found this pre-mixed alcohol in the fridge. I started selling shots to people, and it proved to be really popular. So popular that I gave it a name, Woodpecker, and started raising the price to keep it from disappearing so fast. At one point, the shots were hovering around $10. The next day, we were tallying everything, and I mentioned how we made about $80 off this one particular bottle. That's when my roommate started laughing his ass off. It turns out I was selling non-alcoholic whiskey mix. He bought it at the grocery store for about $4. Whoops! Story 7. One time in high school, there was a 25-cent soda machine outside of Walmart. I bought a soda, went inside Walmart, and the old lady at the door put a sticker on the can. I then put that sticker on a name brand can of soda and snickered my way out of the store with my pilfered pop. Been leading the thug life ever since. Story 8. Not me, but a friend. He managed to get a Target uniform and borrowed a Target name tag from his older brother. Then during Black Friday, he came in, and during the chaos of the morning, he walked off with a TV and Xbox. Story 9. In high school, I sold matchboxes full of chopped weeds as weed. I had steady buyers. Story 10. We were 18 years old, drove to a gas station, grabbed a 12-pack and brought it to the counter. It was maybe $10. When cashier inevitability asked for ID, I tossed $20 on the counter, grabbed beer, and hauled ass to the still idling car my friend was driving. It was quite the heist. Story 11. I made fake coupons. Anything within a store with a UPC barcode, I cold generate a UPC barcode for. This was in college when Four Locos were insanely popular. I made lots of BOGO-free coupons that I sold for those. Anything and everything, from cigarettes to bagel bites to Xbox 360. The key was printing them no gloss paper, to make them look and feel real no matter how ridiculous the discount was. They all scanned and only high-priced items got turned down due to suspicious discounts, example 50% off Xbox 360 and controllers. I even had a QCat, barcode scanner, at home that I tested them with. It got to be such a huge thing that it made the local news, and then I stopped. You can learn a lot of cool, illegal crap on the internet when you're bored during summer break surfing 4chan. Story 12. When I was a senior in high school, our soccer team was pretty good. We weren't usually this good, so the home crowd usually consisted of family members of the team and other faculty. My friends and I eventually got up a large mob of students that would regularly come to soccer games, making the crowd much bigger. We made ourselves known to the region and the other teams we played as the team with the really obnoxious student section. We would do everything we could to mess with the other team. We looked up the roster for each team so we could use their names in the insults that we screamed. We even had 2 or 3 guys that were from the band that would come and literally blast their horns as loudly as they could right before someone from the other team kicked the ball. No music, just a loud car horn type noise. We got so into the way that we could mess with other teams that we decided to take it one step further and mess with one of our upcoming opponents, who we didn't particularly like. We created a fake Facebook profile of this hot girl whose pictures we found on an obscure website, not the front page of Google, so as to make the pics harder to look up. The profile was incredibly believable. We were proud of it. We started friend requesting a lot of people from the school that we were about to play and made the profile look like the girl was from out of town, or homeschooled, I can't remember which, but was transferring in as a new student to that particular school. We added girls and guys alike to also make it seem more legit. Of course, as we were hoping, the profile's inbox was flooded with messages from guys from the school. Your typical, "Hey girl, you're pretty hot, blah blah" type of messages. We started messaging a couple of these guys back. Yes, it did feel weird, FYI, posing as a girl on the internet, starting with small talk saying how we were transferring in and whatnot. We even got lucky and had a member of the school soccer team be one of the guys that we were fake messaging. The conversations like we were aiming for eventually took a turn for the more romantically themed, which fed right into our trap. We had these guys hooked. Seriously. It's crazy what some guys will do for a girl that they've never met before outside of the internet. We tested the waters first by setting up fake meetups with some of the guys at certain times of night as sort of a show me around the area type thing. We looked up a map of their area and even planned out exactly where and what time they would meet. Of course, our fake girl would always stand them up. The thing was, this didn't even throw off the guys. All we had to do was send a message saying, "Hey, sorry, my dad ended up not letting me go out last night. Sorry." And they kept the scam going. Some of their people began seeing through the profile eventually, leading to the creation of a Facebook group called something to the effect of "girl's name we used isn't a real person." This didn't keep us from finishing what we started, though. The biggest part of the whole operation came from the week right before our matchup with the opposing school. On different days, we set up 2 guys, one of them being the player from their team, to make dinner reservations and to pre-order our meals right before she arrived at some of the nicer restaurants in their area that we looked up. Needless to say, our girl never arrived. We made these work by saying that the girl's parents wouldn't let her have a cell phone either, by the way. So these poor saps ended up paying for a date by themselves. To top it all off, when time came for the game, It was an away game, so they had a sizable student population in attendance. One of the guys in our student section made a poster with the girl's picture and name, revealing that she was fake and their school had been trolled by ours. The reaction was priceless. We ended up getting a lot of online threats because of it, which eventually led to us changing the girl's profile into a Taco Bell ad. Best scam I've ever been a part of. Story 13, one of my favorite stories. So I'm a sci-fi author, right? I get invited to conventions to talk on panels. Some panels I know topics, some I barely know, and a few, UTF am I on this panel for? My friend Eric was hosting a panel. I was leaving a previous panel that had just ended when Eric showed up, sat down, grabbed my arm, and said, "Please stay." I asked him why, and he said he was nervous. He never hosted a panel before, and all I ever wrote were short stories. I said he'd be fine, but he was pleading. "You don't have to say anything. Just sit here with me." Okay. What was the panel on? Robert Heinlein. Now, for no other reason than circumstances, I never read much Heinlein. I had read 3 books of his, but I had not read him since I was a teenager. I was not what you would call any sort of expert, any sort of person who understood any of this works beyond Stranger in a Strange Land and The Cat Who Could Walk Through Walls, which I will admit I only got because there was a geisha in an astronaut suit on the cover, and that seemed wicked cool when I was 14 years old. I explained this to Eric, who told me it did not matter. You just needed me there for support. Okay, I didn't really have anything else going on, and he was a friend of mine. I would get him started and then probably leave in the first few minutes. As his panel starts, Eric turns an alarming shade of pale. His arms start shaking. He starts getting covered with a cold sweat, and he can barely introduce himself in the panel before excusing himself and running out of the room. That left me alone in front of about 60 Heinlein fans, all eagerly looking at me to start a panel about their favorite author. Well, I found myself in one of the many absurd positions that a D-list author finds himself at a science fiction convention that he only attended because he wanted to hang out with his friends at the lobby and perhaps eat free cheese and crackers in the green room. Luckily, I had studied improv for several years while working for a comedy group based out of UMCP. That dark comedy part of my mind asked, what is the absolute worst thing that I could say right now, and how would I get out of it? I leaned back in my chair, introduced myself, and fully admitted that I had only read 2 books of Is as a teenager. I was not impressed with him as an author. And frankly, I thought he was overblown and generally fell into luck writing a book at the right time, when anybody could have become a famous big crab in the tiny tidal pool of early science fiction. This one guy in the front row turned red with anger. He was shaking, and his arms got all tense. I had probably insulted his greatest hero, so I called him out on it. Now this guy in the front row seems to have taken umbrage with my statement, and I want to hear what he has to say about it. Boy, did he let me have it. He told me why he thought Heinlein was great. This caused another audience member to disagree with a few of his statements. I asked her to clarify what she meant by a few things that she said. Then the other guy started a counteraction with his statements. A few more audience members joined in. After about 15 minutes, I had at least 4 audience members talking about what they knew about Heinlein and what they thought about his works. And all I did was ask questions based on the last few sentences they might have said, or tying it back with a disagreement that was made earlier. Eventually, I was doing nothing but moderating various random people in the audience. And very quickly, the hour ran out. When everybody was leaving the room, a few audience members shook my hand and said it was the best Heinlein panel that they had ever been on, and they appreciated my clever introduction that Heinlein would have surely approved my fake anti-Heinlein stance. Wink, nobody had any idea. Later, Eric egregiously apologized for running away and said he spent the hour throwing up in the lobby restroom because he lost his nerve with stage fright. But he heard the panel went really well and thanked me for covering his ass. Story 14. At a summer concert, a random drunk girl offered me $20 for my freshly refilled 1-liter water bottle. I quickly accepted and vanished into the crowd. Story 15. Worked at a local pet supply store years ago. 3 assistant managers and about 4 sales associates, including myself, took over 40,000 in merchandise over the course of a year and a half. Story 16. When I was 7, I would go up to the service counter and tell them the vending machine ate my dollar. They would give me $1 back and I would spend it on a free Coke. Story 17. Throwaway for obvious reasons. It all started on ImView. Some of you might know about this site. It's a chat room for teens and adults. You get a little avatar. I had bad luck on this site. I was around 14 years old and I decided to make a female avatar to trick guys into cybering with me, then make fun of them. Well then, I learned I kind of liked it. A few years go by and I'm doing it on a different site. This time I'm a 16-year-old girl and I meet this man who wants to be financially dominated. I figure this is my lucky day and do so, making fun of his junk, and he starts buying me crap on Amazon and shipping it to my house. Honestly, I don't know how I got away with it because I gave him my real name, saying it was the girl's boyfriend. He wanted a webcam, but obviously I couldn't do that. I'd been photoshopping pictures of random girls to look like this person I was pretending, going so far as to put fake sticky notes with his name on them. Eventually, we cut it off because I was asking for too much money. I retired the girl and started using a different one. Lo and behold, he messages the new girl. It's insane, and somehow I get him to believe that I'm the original girl's cousin, and we'd been having an incestual relationship. He started buying more crap for a while, then we cut it off again. I don't do that anymore. Story 18. I watched my friend's dad steal a large, expensive generator from Home Depot. He put it on a flat cart and just walked out, cradling a small dog with one arm and holding a canceled credit card and an unrelated receipt in his teeth. He nodded at the guy at the door who checks receipts and just left. That was the day I knew what it was to be flabbergasted. Story 19. I didn't have a stamp to mail a thank you letter, so I put the return address as the address I actually wanted to send it to, then walked down the street and put it in my mailbox. It probably wouldn't have worked if it wasn't a local address. Story 20. Don't know if this counts as a scam, but I got about $30 from a vending machine. I stuffed some paper towel up there in the morning so that it would catch people's change. They'd go to the cafeteria and be reimbursed, so I didn't feel like I was stealing from my classmates, just the school. Lunchtime, I took out the paper, and it was like winning at a slot machine. Story 21. Convinced a D1 national football program that my friend and I were reporters, so we could watch the game on the field, then an open bar after party upstairs. Story 22. At Walmart a couple months ago, I peeled a barcode sticker off a styrofoam ball, which was like 97 cents from the crafts section, and placed it on a more expensive item and used the self-checkout. Story 23. I am no con artist, but there was time many years back when I had no choice but to run a con. If I didn't run this con, me and my friend would have never enjoyed as much Taco Bell as we did. I went to a small college in the far north. There was a guy who used to hang at the edge of our group who talked constantly about loving substances, Hunter S, etc. There were few substances around to be had, but we would take a few of the vitamin C's we had in our dorm room and occasionally sell them to Phil for a few buck a pop, claiming they were Vicodin, then go get Taco Bell. Our master caper was one night we needed a lot of Chinese food. So we ground up all the baby laxative that my roommate had been given by his mother because his tummy was off and sold it to Phil as blue substances as the chopped up pills were blue. That was some great Chinese food and only ran us 40 bucks. Phil later reported he had been up for days on a Coke binge. I imagine he was up for at least some reasons. Story 24. Well, I'm not an artist because I haven't pulled any other scams other than this. I know this is a pretty lame and crafty thing to do, but years ago I sold a WoW account for like $200. Then reclaimed the account through Blizzard and kept the money. Then I did the exact same thing with the same account again a month later. Story 25. Guy tried to scam me out of $450 for a steering wheel I sold. So I scammed him, ended up with $450 from him anyways, and then sold it to someone else for $250. Also a texting kid. Rear-ended my car. Really, all it really needed was a respray of the bumper cover. He was a pain in the ass the whole time, wanting to pay me under the table and only like $50. I own a body shop, so I just wrote up a ridiculous repair bill, including using parts, new bumper beam, cover, expensive paint, tons of labor, new exhaust that he dented too. Sorry, but when you hit someone's car, picking how their car gets repaired is not up to you. Story 26. Put my Benz on CL for $2,000. This tweaker, calling himself Peter Parker, shows up with $1,000 cash and asks, "Can I give you this grand now, then take the car and pay you later?" I said, "Damn no, sir, but I'll gladly hold your grand while you get the rest, and I'll give you the car once you return with the other grand." For some strange tweaker reason, he agrees to this. I'm a good guy for the most part, so I wait for him to return. Days go by, and none of his phone numbers work except one, which is a motel an hour away. So I said, damn it, and put the car back on CL. I find a buyer, and they pay me. We agreed on, and life goes on. I essentially sold the car twice. Flash forward about 50 days or so, and I get a call from the cops saying some guy named Peter Parker has accused me of stealing his car and money. I flat out tell the cops the story, and also inform them that the $1,000 is long gone, because I never thought I'd hear from him again. They were like, "Chim, well, is anything in writing?" I say, "Nope," and the cop's like, well, ask him if he wants to take you to court over it. But as far as we're concerned, you didn't steal anything. He gave you money and never got the car in its history. Also, we have problems with this guy all the time, so let's just move on. That was the end of it. And I never heard from Peter Parker again, or the cops, or anyone. Story 27. Back in the day, before cameras watching every move, I was a cashier at a restaurant. I wanted to be a waitress. That's where the real money was. Tips. But they said I was too good a cashier to move. Okay, no prob. I'll get my extra money a different way. The cashier was also in charge of selling baked goods from the display case. So I would sell the cookies, take the money, put it into the register, but not ring it up. Kept a running tally of the extra money in the till. But then, how to safely remove the extra cash from the till? Well, in a separate procedure, when a customer would add a tip onto their credit card. The cashier was to take the corresponding amount of cash out of the till, put it in a tiny manila envelope marked with the wait person's name, and give it to them at the end of the night. So, la-dee-da, toward the end of the night, I would just take out all the extra cash from unwrung cookies, put it in a manila envelope, mark it with a wait person's name, and put it with the other envelopes. At the end of the night, it stayed in my apron while all the other envelopes got handed out. I figured if I was ever caught with it, I could just say, "Oh, I meant to give this to wait person." But happily, I was never caught. I taught my friend, coworker, to do it too, and the only problem that arose was when we worked the same shift. We'd argue about who got to steal that night. We only stole about $20 per shift so that they wouldn't notice any substantial decrease in bakery sales. The extra cash and the brownies pilfered from the walk-in fridge. That job was good to me. Story 28. Free movies in theaters in high school. Me and a friend realized that theaters will give you a refund for as long as the movie has not started yet, even if the ticket is ripped. We also realized that the person ripping the tickets gave less than 0 craps about their job and would rip a ticket without looking at the movie time. Put these two together, and you can go to the theater, buy a ticket for a movie that starts in 3 hours, walk in and get it ripped and go see any movie you wanted. After your movie is done, you just go to the counter and make up some excuse for why you can't see the movie. They give you a full refund and you walk out of there with 0 money spent. Also, you can get the really nice fancy seats for free. Story 29. We used to lift vodka bottles from the supermarket. Then we'd half and half a bunch of those little grenade bottles of water. $8 bottle of vodka, and you'd get like 10 little watered-down grenade bottles, which could sell in high school for like $15. Rinse, repeat. Story 30. Over a decade ago, a universally despised company whose name I shall omit was offering people one iTunes song, worth $1, for their email address so they could spam market their products to them. The way it worked was they sent you an email and you had to click the link to confirm that the email was valid, and then they sent you a gift code for one song. The way they checked you hadn't done this more than once was through cookies. God bless their hearts. Deleted the cookie, blocked the website from setting new cookies, opened dozens of free email accounts, automated the sign-up process via macros, and had 3 computers running 24 hours a day getting about 15,000 codes until Despise Company ran out after a couple of days. I had to spend many dozens of hours selling bundles of codes on eBay at a 30% discount, so it ended up requiring quite a bit of work on my part. But I did end up clearing $10,000 after a few months and used it to take my then GF on a trip to New York. No regrets. Story 31. A year ago, I was poor, and my roommate got a coupon from an online food delivery service. $8 off your meal with no minimum spending. I live in Mexico, where $8 can buy you lots of food. So for 2 weeks, I'd create an account using a 10-minute mail service and order food for free, or at most for 50 cents. To make things more interesting, I lived in an apartment complex with like 150 different apartments. So each time I'd choose a different apartment number and then ask the delivery guy to leave the food with the receptionist for convenience. I think I conned like $200 that way. Story 32. I used to play a game called Rusty Hearts. I ran the #1 guild at the time on my server, purely from scammed in-game currency. The scams became so frequent that I overheard guild members talking and telling others to beware the scammer. The scam was super simple. I just took advantage of a crafty system. At the time, the game did not allow you to trade cash shop items. However, you could gift them. It was very common for players to trade in-game currency in return for the seller gifting the cash shop items to them via the CS purchase window. Naturally, the buyer forked up the money first, log in with a brand new character, naked even, and then claim to be an alt of a big-name character on the server. Usually, people didn't verify this. Tell Global you are selling cash shop items. I'm not saying it worked every time, but it worked enough to completely fund the guild and my own ridiculous equipment buys. Sometimes I'd walk away with an entire set's worth of currency. The best part is that a lot of my guiltiest were super paranoid. I would have never targeted them, and didn't. They were protected and didn't even know it. Story 33. When I was younger, I found a way to get paid $12 an hour to play and eat loads of cheese. In high school, I was known in my suburban neighborhood and surrounding area for being a reliable and fun babysitter who was more than willing to sit on Friday and Saturday nights. So much so that I usually was booked 2 months out. My suburb was known for ambitious transplants with money, and I used it to my advantage. When booking me to babysit long evenings, most of the families would ask if I wanted any snacks, and I would always tell them cheese. Pretty sure they all thought that was odd, a weird request. But desperate parents usually don't ask questions, and when I was known for showing up on time and came highly recommend from their friends when I arrived on their doorstep, there would be cheese waiting for me in their fridge. All in all, everyone got what they wanted. Parents got a worry-free night out, The kids had a good time. I got tax-free salary and a crisper full of delicious. It wasn't really a scam, but I still felt like I was pulling one over on the parents. I damn love cheese. Story 34. I had the highest amount of points for my middle school for tests. The answers were hidden in the source HTML on each question. I won a trip to Pizza Hut in a limo at the end of the year, but I was the only one that got enough points to go, so it was a little disappointing. Story 35. In 11th grade, I sold a classmate my PC version of Halo, Combat Evolved. He asked me the next day about a registration key and asked if that was because he was using a Dell. I told him yes. Story 36. Used an old hack of World of Warcraft guild forums to get people's password to that website. They often used the same password for their email. Then you recovered their WoW account. Once you had the account, the fun started. You'd log in and start advertising. You had the WoW trading card game Spectral Tiger Card, which you could use to get an in-game mount. So people would start chatting you. You'd get 7 different chats going, convince the buyer to pay you half before the trade. Then you'd work the rest of the crowd while telling anyone who's already paid you half you were taking a photo. Stall like hell to make some other trades. If you got lucky, the account you logged into had a few tens of thousands of gold. Once people found out you were a fraud, you'd sell all the equipment and crap the account had for the extra gold. Go to a Chinese gold buying website and sell it off at $6 for 1,000 gold. My friend did this throughout one summer and made enough money to buy a $6,000 car and then some. Story 37. I sold the school fundraiser chocolate bars for $2 a piece, normally $1 each, and ate half the box. Here is a lesson for you youngins. Selling candy in school is lucrative. Take your money and invest it in candy and sell it for like 3 or 4 times the original cost. Story 38. I'm kind of late, so I don't know if this will get seen. But one time I was taking in video games to trade into GameStop, probably to buy weed at the time. I had a few whatever games and Mario Galaxy. The guy was scanning the games and asked the dudes behind me if they were looking for something. They responded with that and pointed at Mario Galaxy. The guy told them a used one was 39 cents, whatever cents. I told the guy I'll sell it to you right now for $40. The guy at GameStop told us to make the deal outside. Then I got weed. Story 39. Middle school. This was the late 80s before cell phones, so there was always a line at the payphone in the commons area during lunch. One day I needed to use the phone. Waited in line, plunked in my quarter, and nothing happened. Couldn't dial out. Put in another. Same thing. Went to the office and told them what happened. They said that sometimes if people put their money in and then tried to dial before the deposit registered, it would jam things up. And if you waited a few minutes without trying to use the phone, the money would get kicked back out and the coin return. But when it got jammed, people would still come and pour money in it, and it would just sort of pile up in there. So I always made sure to get to the payphone early during lunch and intentionally jam it, and then stick around and let other people plug more coins into it, and then wait for it to kick back the coins after they'd given up and walked off. Story 40. When I was younger, I got a summer job as the ice cream man for an ice cream truck company. The pay was super crafty. I received 0 wage, had to pay for half the gas, and only got a third of the profits from selling the popsicles. Which isn't a lot considering a popsicle is only $5 and you have to drive around all day to find very few customers. To supplement my income, I bought a bunch of bulk boxes. No name brand popsicles, creamsicles, fudgesicles, drumsticks, water, chips, etc. And whenever people wanted to buy the company's products, I would give them my items and keep all the money. They eventually fired me because my sales were so low. Story 41. Not me, but a friend of mine in college would steal those 375mm plastic liquor bottles. Here is how he did it. He would go to the liquor store, stuff a 375mm bottle down his pants, and then grab a bigger sized bottle. Go to the cashier and use his debit card that has no money in it once the transaction has been declined. He would put on a sad face and give the cashier the bigger bottle and walk out of the store with the smaller bottle down his pants. Worked for 2 semesters. Story 42. Back in elementary school, we had hot lunch tickets that your parents would buy at the beginning of every month. Being very scrupulous, my parents let me and my brothers pick 1 meal per month we wanted from the school, and we had to make our own lunches every other day of the month. I didn't like making my lunch when all my friends were eating chicken nuggets or Italian dunkers. Now in the lunch line, there was no security on the basket where you put your tickets. So I figured out I could just tap my closed fist on the basket so the tickets would jump and open my fist like I dropped a ticket. And none of my classmates around me would notice I didn't actually drop one. Got a lot of free lunches that way, and the one time I got caught, I just said I forgot my ticket at home and didn't have anything to eat and started crying. Still damn love Italian dunkers. Story 43. Well, I'm not proud of this, but here goes. While at university, I would on Omegle, CamChat website, but have my camera turned off. I would tell old men that I was a 16-year-old girl and flirt with them a bit, then offer to email them some pictures as my laptop webcam was broken. I would then Google their email address and usually find a Facebook or something similar. After that, I would threaten to screenshot our conversation of them asking for pics of an underage girl, saying I would show it to their family if they didn't pay $50 or so into my PayPal. Worked quite a few times. I used the money to fuel my weed habit. Story 44. Walking into the bus station, fare paid area through the illegal bus bay entrance while holding the fare in my hand, pretending to be confused, looking around, wondering where I should pay. If I got caught, I'd just play dumb and pay. Never got caught. Story 45. When my husband was younger, like 19 years old, he used to work at Target, and when he would help people to their car, he would make up a story and tell people he had a little daughter, that she was about to start kindergarten in the fall, etc. He actually got the occasional $20 bill because people felt badly for him. Story 46. In elementary school, we had S reading program that if we read a certain amount of time, we would get prizes. In order to get the prizes, you had to have your parents sign a slip that said that you did indeed read whatever amount of time you did. So one week, what I did was I wrote down that I read like an hour during the week, which isn't a lot, and then I gave the slip for my mom to sign so I could turn it in. After my mom signed the slip, I erased that I read an hour and wrote in something huge, like I read 20 hours that week. The next day at school, I have the slip to my teacher, and the prize was one of those huge Hershey's Kisses, totally worth it. Story 47. I was probably in middle school, and me and my friend were going to the movies. We bought 2 tickets, but before we could get into the theater, I lost mine. So I took my friend's ticket and entered the theater and kept the ticket stub in my pocket. Then waited 5 minutes and went up the ticketing guy and said that I lost my stub and I wanted to buy some popcorn. The snack area was outside the booth in this theater, and asked if he could just remember my face. He said, okay, so I went outside, gave my friend the stub and bought some popcorn and enjoyed the movie. Story 48. My partner and I made an $80,000 phone bill go away without too much effort. One whopping lie and some easily created documentation to back it up. The person in charge of collecting the debt had a soft spot, and we hit it hard. She should have sent it to an outside agency or their legal department, but she didn't. She kept listening, and we wore her down in a week. Story 49. I once scammed a scammer who was trying to sell gift cards on Craigslist for half price. Their scam was write down the card number ahead of time and use it to buy something online right after you pay them. So you could call the number and verify the balance when you buy it, but by the time you try to use it, the money would be gone. I had a feeling they were up to something, so instead of calling the number, I had a purchase ready to check out on my phone. I typed in the card number and checked out to verify the card, then paid them the cash. $200 for a $400 gift card, but the look on their face was priceless. Story 50. Let the record show I did not do this. However, I worked with people who did. Wait tables at a corporate restaurant that offered coupons in the newspaper every month. They drove around and bought all the newspapers from all over town on the days the coupons dropped. When a customer paid for dinner that applied to a coupon but didn't bring one, the waiter would apply their own coupon after the fact. The customer still paid the same price, but the corporation paid out for the coupon's value. This resulted in giant cash tips the company never knew about. Story 51. I'm not really a con artist, but back in the day, if we needed money, we would dress up in basketball jerseys and hand out fake pamphlets asking for donations for our Christian basketball league because it was losing money. Then we would ask their name and write it down all official, made like $40 in 2 hours. Story 52. Not I, but my father-in-law created 1,000 email accounts and applied for the free $5 Kohl's Cash online. He'd buy towels on sale, wait 2 weeks, return them when they go off sale with no receipt. He'd then get roughly $9 worth of store credit. From there, he'd return towels with receipt and somehow get cash in dollars. He made about $9,000. Story 53. Back in the early years of self-checkout, Walmart was pretty lax with theft prevention. I would go to the home department and grab a big rug or maybe furniture that you put together. Then, I would go to the kitchen department and peel one of the stickers off a cheap washcloth and stick it to the side of my hand. I would cover the merchandise up EC with the hand that had the sticker on it so it would only read the washcloth when I scanned it. Story 54. I convinced 3 kids I got duped into babysitting that I was Santa disguised as a regular guy, and I was putting together a good-bad list to get them to be good and leave me alone until their dad got home. Story 55. Message to all friends and recent players. Holding a 10th Prestige lobby after the match, 2,400 Microsoft points for 10th Prestige 1 year, Xbox for gold camo. I didn't have to buy anything from Xbox Live for 2 or 3 years. All the kids playing Call of Duty unknowingly paid for my Halo maps. People who've worked for scam call centers, what dark secrets can you now disclose? Worked at one place when I was 19 years old or so that did public radio pledge renewals. Turned out the boss wasn't actually giving that money to anyone, just kept it. Bunch of suits and uniforms showed up and arrested him, shut the company down in the middle of the workday. No idea if he was ever convicted or what might have happened to him afterward. Story 2. Worked for an environmental nonprofit as a teen doing calls and going door to door. I didn't really understand the legislation we were getting signatures for, but hey, it's good for the environment. A very nice hippie lady invited me in and explained that the nonprofit I was working for was financed by the oil companies and was trying to backdoor a way to remove any liability for spills in the Gulf. I did some research, and sure enough, that was indeed the case. Told everyone in my office. About half were horrified, and the other were like, "Hey, it's a living." I left, and so did many others. It was a trash place to work anyway, as you were paid by how much you brought in donations. Story 3. If you don't know, sometimes people who are hearing impaired have these special phones that can caption any calls that come through. I used to be a captioning agent and was captioning a scam call. Now at that company, we have to caption every single call, no matter the context. No exceptions. It was some Middle Eastern-sounding guy pretending to call the police to frighten this elderly woman into giving him money. The woman was on the verge of crying, but that a holes would not let up. I was not having it. It's totally against regulation, but I told the lady it's a scam and just stopped captioning in the middle of the call until the dude hung up. Damn those scammers. Story 4. I worked for a call center for about a month that bugged people to donate to charities with very similar names to actual charities, but less than 1% of the pledge would actually go towards a charity. When I found this out, I felt anxious about it and left, basically ghosting on it. No manager or employee of any kind even so much as called once when I missed my next shift. I just stopped showing up and then never heard from anyone again. A few weeks later, I got a call to my landline that I don't give out, asking if I wanted to come work for the exact same company. In my head, I was like, do you guys even remember that I literally did work there and then just stopped showing up? Oh, okay then. Definitely how a legitimate and not shady corporation would act. Story 5. You're desperate for a job. They call you, and it seems legit enough. You go through training, and it's fun. The people in your training class are all pretty cool. The managers make you feel special. You think you might actually like this. Then it happens, you get on the phone, first real day of work, and after the 5th person hangs up, you realize that you are one of those people. How did I not see this before? But your managers are behind you, cheering you on, telling you not to lose steam, offering free lunches. You get conflicted. You know it's wrong. I worked there 2 days. The 3rd day I came to work clocked in, looked around and just got up and left. Story 6. It wasn't a scam, but I needed a job in college, so I went to the job fair. First booth I approached was the Alumni Center, connected with the hiring manager, and got the job on the spot. Come to find out, we had to cold call alumni and ask for a gift to the university. The cherry on top was that I was assigned a list of numbers of alumni who had graduated in the 60s. Few calls ended with widows upset or crying. I was asking for their deceased spouse. I lasted 2 weeks, and no called no showed. Not my proudest moment, but needed out. Story 7. A long time ago, like in the early 1980, I got a job at a call center. I was about 21 years old at the time. There were 6 of us who started the same day. The deal was we were selling discount photocopy paper and toner. Back in the day, toner powder was poured into a reservoir by the user. The call center manager gave us several scripts, but encouraged us to ad lib once we got the hang of it. We were to call businesses from a list they had generated. A typical narrative would say that due to some accident, duplicate order, trucking accident, bankruptcy, etc., we had tons of surplus toner or paper. Whenever we first mentioned toner, we were told to say, you know that black messy stuff you put in your copier as kind of a folksy hook, and were to refer to Xerox, HP, and Canon as the big 3. At this point, we were told and believed that the supplier bought bulk supplies from real accidents, bankruptcies, and overstocked items. So basically, the scripted narratives were mostly true. In truth, we were just an order placer for bulk wholesalers of supplies. There were no accidents, mistakes, or bankruptcies involved, but apparently these lies helped people believe they were getting a deal. The first day, I didn't do any live calls, just training, role-playing, and practice with a sales trainer and instruction on how to process orders and record calls. Since the pay was 100% commission, this was unpaid work. The second day, only 2 of the new hires showed up. It started with a sales huddle, a raw affair where we celebrated the previous day's numbers and top performers and were given the key messages for the day, week, and told who was pushing paper versus toner. I was put on the toner team. I spent the morning shadowing an experienced salesperson who made several sales each hour, but again, unpaid work for me. Then was given a headset, a list, and an order book after lunch. I made my first sale on about the 3rd call. Huge cheer. I was a star for 30 seconds. But then, nothing the rest of the day. So basically, I made about $10. After work, I saw a fellow salesman waiting for a bus, so I offered him a ride to get the scoop on the company because I was having some doubts. He basically said he had just quit and the whole business was a scam. The lists given to the callers were sorted. The top salespeople got pre-qualified leads. The rest got basically random businesses. The one sale I got that day was a plant. Everyone gets one plant on their first day. For every 100 or so calls, You get about 20 that actually listen to your narrative, and maybe one that places a small order. And about 3 of the orders are canceled almost immediately, so there is no commission. For many of the canceled orders, their phone number got put on the pre-qualified list for the top salesmen the next month. He also told me the whole overstock, trucking accident, bankruptcy thing was a big lie. We were just placing orders for a bulk supplier. The prices were cheap because the licensed suppliers had much bigger markups, but that message didn't sell as well. We also had a cheaper, inferior product that would often void the warranty of the manufacturers. Third day, I didn't show up. Story 8. For a while in Florida, go figure, I was selling Back to the 50s concert tickets. This was to raise money for a police union, but we were told to start off every conversation with, you know the Just Say No to Substances program in schools? Total scam. The concert was all of these has-been acts and barely anybody showed. Only lasted a couple of months. Story 9. I'd say they know, yes. Next time you get one of those scam calls about your car's warranty, go ahead and push the button to be connected to a representative. Ask them, so you know you're working for a scam company that is making unsolicited robot calls, right? Best you ever get is a sigh as they continue to read the script if they don't just outright hang up on you. Story 10. When I was about 19 years old, I worked for a call center for 3 days. They were scamming everyone, including the employees. First, shifts were only 3 hours long, and you would be scheduled for 2 of those back-to-back. This is because if you are scheduled for longer than that, you are 1, legally entitled to break time 2. If you are scheduled for longer than 3 hours and get cut, you have to be paid a minimum of 3 hours. The company would regularly cut you if you weren't bringing in enough money. You were then expected to return for your next shift. I'm sure they screwed people's paychecks somehow, but I walked out in day 3 and abandoned my paycheck. I walked out because that was the day I learned where the money went. See, we weren't selling crap. We were raising money for incurable disease research. The key piece that led me to quit was when I learned that 1% of all donations went towards the actual research. The remaining 99%? Well, it was lining pockets and funding other centers to scam people. I now only donate directly to a source, and even then, only after vetting them. Story 11. Worked a call center in college. Lasted all of 2 hours. We were collecting for some state trooper support fund or something, and there was a manager circulating on the floor with his own manager's headset where he could come plug in and listen in on your calls. Dude was a tool, total Colin Farrell's character from Horrible Bosses type. You know that guy's dark purple dress shirt with skinny black tie, chain wallet, bad goatee, starting to lose his hair at 25, drives a Sentra with an expensive stereo in it and smells like clove cigarettes. That guy. Cut into a call where this elderly lady went from, sorry, I can't contribute anything this year, to, because I'm having surgery, and blah blah. And Todd or Chad or whatever his name was is all, bro, you just need to cut people like that off and get to the next call. Duck them. I just realized that was not what I wanted to spend my time doing. Story 12. One of my best friends since childhood was convicted in 2006 of armed robbery. He was outskirts of the city, close to suburbia Jewish kid from a normal family that for some reason always was addicted to heroin since we were about 14 years old. Nobody around us did substances at 14 years old, so why was he doing heroin? At that point, who knows? Anyway, he spends from summer 2006, fall 2009 in prison. Robbed a lady outside of a supermarket because he was dope sick for like $8, no less. This is a day after I had just lent him money to buy a prescription which he never filled and just went and got high, which pissed me off. Anyway, the women turned out to be an off-duty cop and showed up to court demanding he do jail time and not some substances rehab, etc. So away he went. He had called and asked me to bail him out pre-trial, but I refused because I was pissed he lied to me and took my money. Anyway, he's released in 2009, clean and sober and ready to start life. A few months later, he responds to a Craigslist ad to work in a call center for like $10 an hour. For a few months, he's doing that. I remember specifically I was in Las Vegas by the pool at Grand. It was early May 2010, and I was there for the Mayweather-Shane Mosley fight. And he had called me to tell me his boss made him office manager. He'd be making over $100,000 a year, and it was just great news. To be honest, it kind of made me question my entire life that a guy who had just spent 3 years in jail would suddenly be making more money than me. But I guess I really didn't think much into it. He was clean and doing good, so I was happy for him. Anyway, time goes on, and in the summer of 2011, he gets engaged, is having a brand new house built, driving a Mercedes, etc. My mind is blown, and it's at this point I start looking into what he was doing, and it wasn't long before I figured it out. The call center he was running was taking leads from payday loan companies. The leads were people they know needed money, so they would offer to sell these people a credit card for $20 down, and then a maintenance fee of $10 a month. They promised these people a credit limit of $5,000, etc. The sale pitch thing was that as soon as they got a yes, they already had the customer's bank account info from the payday loan lead, and they would go in and take $20 out of the person's bank account and then $10 each month. They weren't supplying any credit card at all. It was all bull crap. And they were stealing about $15,000 a day just from that little office. Anyway, in January 2012, the Federal Trade Commission raids the office and shuts it down. My friend didn't even move into his new house yet. His wedding wasn't happening until September 2012, and crap just hit the fan. At first, he said it was a civil thing, not criminal, and he wasn't on the hook. He said he knew it was a crappy product, but would never risk going back to jail, and his bosses swore to him that a lawyer will approve everything. Well, as his grandmother told him, he was a schmuck. He had a kid with his new wife in 2014, but he was always indicted criminally by the federal government for those charges. He pleaded guilty, and guess what? He started doing substances again. His wife left him. He wasn't allowed to see his kid, etc. Jump forward to May 2017. He's still awaiting federal sentencing. He's living in his brand new custom-built home still, but he's renting rooms to different roommates, running a call center out of the basement, and getting high every day. He overdosed and passed away May 11th, 2017. So what else is there to say? Scam call centers? I've personally witnessed a large one. And these guys were robbing the poor so that they could drive Benz and duck escorts in Costa Rica. In the end, each one of them got a large dose of comeuppance. My friend in the worst way. He lost his life. It's just a ducked-up arch, really. And it's a shame because for the 3 years he was out of jail and doing good, everyone was proud of him, and we had a lot of good times. I was the best man in his wedding, but like most things, it was all too good to be true, I guess. Story 13. I've done 2. The year was 2014. I quit a job in early 2013. My dad died 3 months after. I never found a job after that, and anything related to his death drained the duck out of my bank account. And it was either beggars can't be choosers and get any job, even if it goes way against your moral compass and you can't stand telemarketers. So you are your own worst enemy, or wind up homeless. First one, my then friend told me they were hiring. It was B2B selling bulk ink and toner subscriptions. They had 3 names for all 4 CONUS time zones. Among them was Green Tech Imaging. Can't remember the other 2, aka Vivid Ink and Toner and Allstate Imaging. And I didn't realize how horrible it was until my home printer actually ran out of ink and I innocently asked if there was an employee discount. The supervisor then confessed that they fell apart in the printers, and this was a ploy to trap them into a subscription service buying a crap load of toners a month, even if it's a company that hardly prints anything. I lasted 2 weeks before the manager actually got fired for not meeting quota, and the guy taking his place was an absolute schmuck. He'd hang up on good leads on the first question, good or bad, so lots of people weren't getting their bonuses. But I was already thinking about quitting because of its ethics, and did the second day he got his promotion. Since my so-called friend was a heartless git, I stopped being friends with him for other reasons. He didn't see what the big deal was and still referred me to the next place. Second one, this was a company selling remodeling, but they gaslit the customers into thinking that they signed up at an expo or something. The opening line was something like, "The last time we talked, you said you may have been interested in doing some things to your house." And basically hitting the do not call button was a big no-no. I wish I can find the pic I took, but it said, "No good or do not call =, not your call. People caught hitting these buttons will be fired immediately." The FTC didn't do jack about it, and I think the Gits are still around but changed their name and uses a different name. In 2014, they were known as Gold Remodeling, but when they make calls it used a name I can't remember. Story 14. I worked for a scam call center for less than a week, but it wasn't a scam for the customers. It was a scam for the employees. It was a work-from-home job, and this one was contracted through eBay. Name of the scam company was Arise. The company had required paid training, which the employee had to pay $300 out of pocket plus equipment fees for. Equipment as in I had to buy a special phone for the job. It was 3 weeks of training with no pay before we started the job, and we had to pass every exam to actually be hired and paid. If you didn't pass, you were kicked out and your money wasn't refunded. The class started with over 70 students and ended with less than 12 of us who passed. I secretly teamed up with 2 other employees and cheated on the tests with them so we could finish the class and not be out $300. We passed, and then we started taking actual calls from customers. That was a nightmare for both parties because everyone that passed still had no idea how to use their software. So the customers were frustrated trying to resolve their issue when we had no idea what we were doing. Even when we knew what to do in the software, their system was so laggy, it would take an hour to resolve a 5-minute issue. And if the call lasted longer than expected, the managers would chew us out. One day, their entire system crashed an hour into the calls for everyone across the country. We all had to clock out and not get paid for that entire shift. I complained on the group server chat, and the managers told me basically that I'm stupid and need to try harder. I got mad and called them out, and I was kicked and locked out of the system. I called and emailed them and got no response. My coworker friend asked them about it, and they said, basically my complaints weren't valid, and I should know how to work their system, but I don't. So, I'm fired. My friend lasted the longest out of everyone in class, and that was only another 2 weeks after I was fired. The contractor who hired me and got a portion of my money for training called me a week later, asking me to mail him this chip that was part of the equipment, and if I didn't mail it back to him, he would have to pay eBay $150 out of pocket. Take a guess what my next object on my objects to destroy list was? He tried to bargain with me and say he has my paycheck worth $50, and he will mail it to me once he has the chip. I basically told him to duck off. Guys, don't get a work-from-home job where you have to pay for training and buy equipment for. Make sure it's legit before doing anything. Companies arise work from home. Story 15. Obviously a throwaway because of reasons, but I worked for one company which acted as two, called AidNest, while pretending to be two companies. Can I do this, or do I have to edit the names out? The companies don't exist anymore anyway. I found out a couple of months into the job that although it wasn't exactly a scam per se, we were selling a service that people didn't need and could do for themselves. Later, though, everything turned into a scam when the following happened. The owner's old business partner sued his balls off and managed to get all of his accounts frozen, including, of course, the ones where all of the client's money went and where all of our salaries came from. A couple of weeks later, we weren't even allowed into the building anymore. Almost 200 call center agents left on the street jobless. Oh, and during those couple of weeks, we didn't get paid, but we're all forced to come in and try to make new sales to effectively pay our own salaries while things pick back up. They never did. They still owe me about $3,000. We went to the Ministry of Labor, we made quite a fuss, and it even made the news, without identifying the company itself. The legal representatives fled the country, and, well, I guess we'll all just have to be pissed forever. It broke my heart every time I continued to receive email notifications, which I can't turn off from clients who are still looking for responses and for help with their debt. And I can't even log into the system, which was paid for by the company because it's not being funded, but somehow still receives incoming messages. Don't know how that works. So I guess what I mean is, if you worked with AidNest and haven't been getting answers, that's why. So not only the clients got scammed, but the employees did too. I'm spending way too much time on this comment that probably only a couple of people will read, but I think it's my one chance to help at least one or two people realize that although they didn't start out being scammed, they definitely were eventually because of the piece of crap owners. Story 16. Got a job at a telemarketing place once. First day was told, if you are okay scamming people, you can make a lot of money. After the intro class, we were split into pairs and were told to listen in to the experienced workers. Essentially how it worked was, you call into a real company and these scammers would get phone numbers close to the reputable companies. So as you call in and are on hold, you think you are waiting to speak with them. A message would come on with some kind of scam deal, a free trip, $1 subscription for 12 months that costs you hundreds later on, things like that. The very first call, this confused senior, who thought she was waiting to speak with her bank, so she willingly gave out things like her credit card number, etc. By the time she clued in and realized it was a scam and asked us not to process the information, the rep hung up on her and was actually laughing. Needless to say, I hopped on a bus home after that to go back to the want ads. Story 17. I had a friend who worked at a scam call center, and he didn't realize it until about 2 weeks after I told him that's what it was. When he first described the job to me, selling encyclopedias, educational books by cold calling the SOMS in 2010, I told him it sounds like a scam. Not that he's scamming anyone, but the business owners were. He insisted the owners couldn't be scammers because they're average white Americans. This scam call center was in a major US city. My friend was an American who had never left the United States. I had to pick him up from this job once. It was at some random office park. The owner and his wife were at the front desk, dressed like they were on a tropical vacation. We're nowhere near anywhere tropical, heavily tanned, just looked very out of place and kind of sleazy. I got to see the work area, which was a fold-up round table with a bunch of computers around it. The whole place looked like it could be packed up in a very short time and looked very sloppy. After he got in the car, I told him the place looks extremely shady to please quit before it gets raided or something because while I can't be sure, the owners are probably doing something illegal. He finally quit about a week later. I never figured out what happened to the business, but who the hell was buying books from a random phone call? Even back in 2010. Story 18. I got hired to work in a loans office on the phone. Incoming calls. Basically, they come across like a broker telling people they qualified for certain loans and we would hook them up. We would then send a text with identical links to apply for loans. Pretty much every text had the same links. We charged them for a non-service. They weren't approved for anything. I hated the idea of working there. I thought I'd just get through the training and consider my options. I was hired by an agency, not the only time I was screwed over by an agency, who assured me that I'd easily make above the lower range of starting wages because I had call center experience. I'd also get to pick my shifts, etc. All lies. Shocker. A place that scams customers also scams employees. They refused to even show me a contract until I had worked for 2 days. I lasted 3 days and probably wouldn't have stayed so long, but my husband's cousin worked there and thought the place was ace. I sent a scathing resignation email to the agent and the employer. Story 19. Have you ever been to a county fair or a rib fest or similar, and there's a drum with fill out a form to win a Caribbean vacation? Well, let me tell you, everybody wins, but you don't want the prize. We were trained to call people and tell them they'd won a free vacation to the Bahamas, but they had to pay $400 in administration fees and pay their own airfare down to Cape Canaveral. Then, for their 3-day cruise, they had to sit through 3 timeshare presentations. One before they got on the boat, one on the boat, and one when they got off. But we weren't taught that. I only found that out by reading the terms and conditions. So okay, you paid $400 plus air for a 3-day cruise for 2. Still not too bad, right? $200 each for 3 days with all your meals? Yeah, the timeshare would be annoying, but still not awful. So I stuck with it for a couple of weeks, during which time I found about the timeshare presentations, which made me a bit leery. Then, we were asked to come in early for 1 day as the big boys from the downtown office were coming up to give us a pep talk. Well, it was some pep talk. The guy comes in and starts swearing at us right from the start. I was convinced he was trying to out Alec Baldwin from Glengarry Glen Ross. Coffee is for closers. We were terrible, awful salespeople. He didn't know why they were wasting valuable leads on us. I had to stop myself from splack-maining, as these valuable leads were just people's names scrawled on a piece of paper, and that our results were half what the closers downtown were producing. Then he started to give us crap, because we were letting too many people opt to mail in a check or money order for their $400. "Pull cards!" he shouted. "Pull cards! Pull cards!" That's when it dawned on me that they probably wanted the credit card numbers for something more than the $400. I quit the next night, and 2 weeks later, when I went back to pick up my last paycheck, the place was shut up tighter than a drum. I read in the paper that a scam center had been busted, but they didn't give enough details for me to be sure. But I'm fairly certain it was them. Story 20. When I was younger, I worked for a telemarketing company that got hired by other companies to sell their products. It was all right at first, and quite fun since you got to go on different projects quite often, and the pay was good if you managed to sell some. Had always heard rumors about telemarketing scams and whatnot, but it didn't seem like anything we sold or called for was something of the sort. Products were good, the agreements were easily understandable, and never heard anyone having a hard time ending a subscription or being charged some insane amount, etc. Until we got a new client that was dealing with nature products. They wanted us to sell a small test package of 3 variants where the content depended on if the person we called were either male, female, old, etc. We couldn't choose who we called, it was random. Went pretty well at first, and the products sold pretty easily. Until a week or 2 later when our calls started to reach people who had been a customer previously to that company. Turns out that when people accepted this test package, they, unbeknownst to them, and us, also accepted a subscription for various other products that they would automatically get sent and charged for, and it was really expensive. And apparently, there wasn't a way for costumers to get hold of this company to cancel anything either, even though there was phone numbers, email addresses, street address, and even fax machine numbers to reach them. We got provided with that as well in order to give to costumers if they ever wanted to contact the company. But apparently, the phone numbers were all not in use. Emails bounced, and I'm not sure about the street address or fax machine, but ID bet that was fake as well. I heard so many stories from people being ruined by that scam from them that I couldn't take it anymore. I never went back to work there after that. If the company I work for takes on a job like that, they are either just as cruel or too damn stupid not to check up on their clients, and I refuse to be a part of that. Story 21. Had an interview for me. Went in, felt dodgy, went through into the guy's office. He's chatting away about the business fixing roofs and selling certain types, but you'll only answer incoming calls. As soon as he said that, I knew he was full of crap. The callers closest to the office I watched do call-outs and, "Hi, I'm calling from blah" script. I deliberately fluffed the interview from then on and left as fast as I could. Story 22. So I work in a third-party call center for Us Health, and if they aren't a scam, then I don't know what is. I hate this job with a passion and fully plan on quitting once I can land another job. Last time I lost a job, I went 6 months and probably 200 applications later before landing this crap hole of a gig. Don't particularly want to do that again. If anyone is wondering why I think one of the biggest health insurance companies is a scam, they make every applicant go through a 30-minute long health history questionnaire that's worded in a way to specifically confuse people. Depending on your past health history, you can be flat out denied. Ever had any kind of DUI or any run-in with the law, even if it was 15 years ago? Denied. Any kind of incurable disease? Denied. Smoking, tobacco use? Denied. Seen a chiropractor regularly, even only for general wellness because it feels good? Denied. As far as I can tell, they specifically look for healthy people so they can charge them hundreds of dollars every month knowing they won't have to pay out. There are a few people who have one of the above who managed to slip through, but that is because one of the verifiers screwed up and input the wrong information. For the incurable disease one, all a verifier has to do is place once at the end of the doctor's name and you will be denied, even if you said no to having incurable disease. So yeah, I hate this job with a passion and hope to leave soon. Story 23. My sister got scammed recently by fake cops. She kept asking to talk to a higher up and their higher up, etc. They always had someone for her to talk to. I want to know how many people are on the average scam like that. Do they write a script? How do the logistics work like that? Why did my sister make such a dumb mistake? Story 24. I worked for a company that sold coupon books for $20 a pop. They were signing up for a subscription that would charge them $30 per month after the first month if they didn't cancel. I always emphasize the cancellation part, but know that I duped lots of people out of money. I made good money for a college student, $14 an hour plus commission, and I was one of the top sellers on my shift, so got quite a bit extra. People would call in, so I didn't do cold calls, which made me feel a little better. Between calls, I read comics. I put in my 2 weeks so I could focus on school, but when I went to work the next day, they were shut down. Everyone was crying in the parking lot, except me. We were all getting 2 weeks severance. Story 25. They know. I've called these callers out before. I say things like, put down the script, buddy. And then they say they're not reading a script. And then you can hear them frantically turning the pages of their script to find the objection response for calling them out on having a script and what to say next to try and sell you something. Story 26. I don't think mine was a scam, but it was incredibly sketchy. It was a call center where we cold called people to try to set them up with a college that offered majors they were interested in. Doesn't sound terrible, but we were only set up with certain colleges and these people needed to fit a certain criteria. One of them being having a home computer with access to the internet, access to a library, did not count. There were a surprisingly large amount of people that did not have that. That's not the sketchy part, that's just sad. But plenty of people yelled at us and wanted to be put on a do not call list. What was sketchy was that if you've applied for jobs online, like Career Builder, Monster, etc., oftentimes after you fill out an application, there will be a box asking for your phone number to be contacted that was not related to the application at all. And that was how we got people's phone numbers. It was also sketchy we were only set up with certain colleges. That's how we got kickbacks, but we clearly didn't have these people's interest in mind at all. They tried to implement something where you were only allowed a certain amount of bathroom breaks. As a female, that doesn't. So I eventually stopped showing up. Damn that place. Story 27. In the early 2000s, I worked for a place that sold extended car warranties. People would end up on our list by clicking some link on car-selling websites like AutoTrader to request extended car warranty information. The warranties were expensive. Think $6,000. It seemed like a very legit, exciting service, as it allowed people who otherwise could not get an extended warranty through their dealership could get one from us. I was making decent money and was proud to be helping out so many people, but that pride didn't last. By the middle of the 4th week, I found we were selling extended warranties in a state we weren't even licensed to. Management's solution was that we will be by the time they need to use it, and if we aren't, we'll just refund the ones that complain. I asked the question about why we wouldn't return everyone's money if we got denied for their area, and was basically told I'm a dumb kid, and why would the company give up profits? My direct manager, with a Weasley smile that still haunts me to this day, pulled me aside and said, it would be unethical of us to deny those people the peace of mind our warranties provide, even if they can't actually use them. That is when it hit me that this might not even be a real business. My sales dropped off immediately, as I has no fire left. I loved selling, but I just couldn't keep selling a lie. Was let go at the end of my 6th week when I was supposed to get my first commission. Real business or not, I was glad to be out of there. The location closed shop within 3 months. I'm still not entirely sure if the business was legit or a scam call center, but it was morally wrong all the same. Story 28. Can't talk about any in the United States, but my wife regularly gets calls on her business line, forwarded to our house since she works from there, from Indian call centers pretending to be Microsoft. She likes to lead them on, and just when they think they're going to get access to her PC, she turns on them and tries to make them feel like crap. Do you know that you're preying on old people? How would you feel if someone did this to your mother or grandmother? And then do you have any spiritual beliefs? Do you know you're probably going to come back as a cockroach in the next life? Story 29. I worked in a call center during my senior year of high school, along with a few other guys from our DECA class. We had to get a job, and somehow this one attracted a few of us. Basically, we would cold call and tell people, you get a $100 Shell gift card and all you have to do is sign up for this service at $30 a month and you can cancel anytime. We were selling free gas. Come to find out the service we were selling was not something you could cancel right away, and it required a 60-day notice. The gas card wouldn't be sent out for 120 days, and it wouldn't be sent out at all if you canceled before then. So basically, you'd have to give 60 days cancellation notice after you received your card. 120 days = 4 months. It's $120 and then 60 days cancellation = 2 more months. They made about $180 for nothing and spent $100 on a gas card once they got their money. Duck them. I made $1,000 plus that week as a 17-year-old, so I was stoked. Then I found out what was happening, and we all just spent the day saying "WASP" to people we were connected with on the phone and never went back. Story 30. I worked at a telemarketing place for 2 weeks where we would call people and straight up tell them that they ordered light bulbs and ask at the end, "Can we count on your payment of $40? Everyone on the list sounded like a very old person, and not one of them said, "Yes, I did order light bulbs. Why are you calling about it instead of just sending them? Is there a problem?" Etc. Only a few said, "Nope, there's been a mistake. Bye-bye now." Most of them just seemed confused, not about the light bulb thing, but just in general. The most common answer to the "can we count on your payment" was, "I don't know." But most of the time, they would just talk randomly without acknowledging the question or the context of the call. Just happy to talk to someone? It was maybe 1 or 2 people in a 5-hour shift who would immediately say yes. And with these, I would verify their address, end the call, and circle their number in the list. We were basically whittling this list of old folks down to the ones who were A, senile enough to go along with the scam, and B, probably not too senile to follow the necessary instructions. Get your checkbook, read the numbers on it, etc. I only worked there 2 weeks because I showed up for a shift one day and no one was there and the sign was gone. Story 31. I almost worked for a scam that was a water filtration company posing as a non-profit trying to get water to developing countries. I quit during orientation when I was told I needed to pay $400 for a starter kit. Story 32. I worked for Embassy Suites 10 years back. Why do I call it a scam call center when people call us? We charge people $300 to $500 a night on any night our local college had an event, and we still sold out. The place regularly oversold rooms on these days and left it all to me, night auditor, to tell every livid family that they had no room. I had a stack of my manager's cards and my general manager's cards and handed them out. I understand you are mad, and I would be too, but I am the only person here trying to help you. These people are the reason you don't have a room. According to my boss, the Hilton brand awarded money to the hotel every time they sold out. Nearly every night that we were close to selling out, my boss made a bunch of fake reservations and wanted me to check them all in. I told him he would have to check them in himself if he wanted to commit fraud. He did. I sent emails to Hilton asking them for advice on the situation and never heard anything about it. Sometimes I wonder if Hilton just didn't care. Probably didn't. Story 33. If you want some top quality scam interaction, check out Kit Boga on Twitch. He does a stream where he calls up numerous scam call centers and wastes their time in a very entertaining manner. Afterwards, he confronts them and has even gotten a few of them to quit. My favorites are the PC repair scams where he has them connect to his virtual PC. Story 34. I worked as an unpaid volunteer for a non-profit. My family was super proud of me for it, but I had to give up phone contact with my family. All forms of entertainment movies, music, TV, video games, and delayed college. Started in a call center, but moved into door-to-door sales in the South a few weeks later. I really believed in the organization and thought it would improve people's lives. Company leadership just cared about numbers and people who could donate money. Got really disillusioned with it after that and came to realize I was just recruiting for a pioneer cult. I was a Mormon missionary. Story 35. After I started at one selling credit cards to old people on Social Security, disability, I realized what I was being told to do, and I walked out. That place was absolutely awful, and I legitimately felt bad for anyone I successfully duped into signing up with their one-time lifetime member card activation fee of $199. Story 36. I once convinced a telemarketer that I was a homicide detective, investigating the murder of the person he asked to speak with when I picked up, my uncle. Once I knew I had him hooked, I began to slowly start to insinuate that he could possibly be a suspect in the homicide I was investigating. The dude couldn't have been older than 19 years old, and he was actually getting extremely nervous as I continued to essentially interrogate him about this homicide that never happened. I managed to coerce his full name, personal phone number, and address out of him, told him that my office would be in touch, and hung up. A couple weeks later, I printed out like 60 pictures of Big Junal and sent them to the address he provided. Story 37. I constantly call the scammers from India to waste their time. One time I talked to a guy who was new and got his training. He was legit and hated his job. I got his phone number and we talked via WhatsApp. He legit thought it was real until the second day and quickly learned it was a scam. He felt awful doing it and quit not long after, but was afraid because it's all organized crime there. They apparently bribe cops to look the other way. Story 38. Obligatory, not me, but my brother worked as customer support for one of these American subscription-based service companies. They had a system where he'd only get paid for calls that gave him a good rating, and most if not all calls were people asking to cancel the service. But he'd also only get paid if they didn't cancel. Basically, it was a scam to incentive employees to lie to customers and pretend they canceled their accounts without actually doing it, but without actually telling the employees to lie. That's why it's so hard to cancel these sorts of subscriptions. These people sometimes will be scamming their employees just as much as the people they call. Story 39. I worked at one during my senior year of high school. I was desperate for money. I thought it was a salesperson type job where we were actually selling stuff. I just didn't pay attention to what we were selling because I was mindlessly reading off the script. Everyone was considerably nice and hard workers. The boss man took me into his office and showed me the ad for what we were selling, and it turned out to be one of those Bahama vacations or whatever for a cheap price. The boss man was proud of this ad he made and said, "It's a realistic ad that people actually fall for, but we try to get people who are not all there in the head." Something along those lines anyway. I finished the shift and never returned after that. Story 40. Do you guys ever get those scam calls at your work asking for your printer model number? Say, "Oh yes, here it is." Duck, and then they will yell obscenities at you and hang up. Very satisfying. Story 41. Worked in a very large call center for a huge cable company, only for 2 weeks. They had super hard to meet quotas and high employee turnover. They had a special every football season that was about $30 a month, but that doesn't include equipment unless you had perfect credit. It ended up being close to $400 for most people to set up. So lots of callers, thinking they would be spending only $30, hung up after the real total was revealed. But you lost the call, so it was a strike against your call record. Too many of those, which wasn't all that many, got you sacked. They also had weird game show style incentives where employees could win unspecified amounts of cash. Story 42. I didn't know at first. I was interviewed, I had telemarketing experience, and they hired me, gave me a script and a trainer to show me the ropes. After reading the script, I was just thinking, we're calling these people, telling them they got some free shiny watch and 6 free magazine subscriptions they confirm. Another agent calls them back to collect credit info and charge a reoccurring fee that's very difficult to stop. Call center was, and still is, operating to this day in a small little town in Montana. Same dude still running it. Must be making a killing. This was over 7 years ago. I got fired because I sucked at scamming PPL. Story 43. I worked at an help center for a few weeks. People that couldn't get into their email would search Google and end up on our site. We'd use scare tactics like the error log to make them think their computer was the reason they couldn't get into their email. I actually got laid off a couple weeks after getting hired because Google cut us from advertising and our one search result place was taken. It took me a couple weeks after that to realize it was scummy since the demographic I usually spoke to was 60 years old. Story 44. A friend of mine worked at a call center for political donations in the previous presidential elections. It wasn't a scam per se, but they had scripts to follow for various things that were just horrible. Example, if you called for Mr. Johnson and his widow picked up, you had a script to guilt the loved one into donating because it was clearly the legacy he wanted and anything else would be a disservice to his memory. Story 45. I worked for AMLM Customer Support Center as a company employee on payroll, not a Hun, for 12 years. When I first started, I figured it was just a weird organization structure. This was one of the less sketchy companies out there, as I seen folks actually making decent money if they knew what they were doing. But I feel the MLM business model is not a very sustainable one and causes needless markup of the products. I stayed as long as I did because I am highly passionate about being able to afford food. Story 46. Not a call center and never worked for them, but a company that preys on fresh out of high school teens. Almost everyone from my high school graduating class received a letter a week after graduation from a company called Vector. They promised a starting bonus, and $22 an hour said you could bring home $3,000 a week. Looked into it more, it was a stupid, you buy the product outright and get commission based on what you sell going door to door asking people to buy it from you. Scummy company right there. Story 47. Real people spamming is a legacy thing. I can't explain to a robot that I don't accept solicitations on my cell phone. My rage when they continue to try is wasted. Although I did get a call from a real person recently. She sounded sweet. She did her spiel, and I politely told her that I do not accept solicitations on my cell phone. She then moved on to the next text, and I said, "Lady, what the duck did you not understand about? Poor her. Poor me." Story 48. My little brother, who at the time was around 20 years old at the time, received a call from someplace in Nevada, and for whatever reason, he gave them his information, and a couple of days later, there were funds drawn from his account, and this kept happening every week. He had to call up his bank to put a stop to it. I don't know what they said to him or why he agreed to even pass on his personal information, but Lessons learned. It was a scam. Story 49. I worked for a debt collections company that collected predatory debt, cash loans, for a year. I didn't catch on to how corrupt it was, as apparently we didn't even own the debt. We would have these programs that allowed us to fish out previous collections history and use that to collect the debt. It took me a bit to realize the scam part of it all, so I marked a few people as deceased, so they'd stop harassing them, walked out, and never looked back. Story 50. I worked for a place doing this also. I would always enter foreign language or talking in background to maybe hint to the victim that not only was the person foreign, but they're in a call center. So many times I just wanted to caption scam call or something similar, but you're never sure if they're actually reading the captions, and it's against Federal Commission regulations to caption something that wasn't actually said. That was a tough job. Story 51. A relative has a friend, no really, who worked for one of those places that will lend money to anyone. Apparently they never said no to anyone who called. So this friend made good commissions for a while and genuinely thought it was a great job. But then the government shut down the business, presumably because of usurious lending practices. Story 52. Kit Boga, who regularly prank calls scammers to waste hours of their time. It's both hilarious to watch and pretty informative.